What's going on, everybody? Noah from Stage 3 Motorsports here, and today I'm going to show you how to install Rough Country's rear gate reinforcement bracket, their spare tire carrier relocation bracket, and their third brake light relocation bracket for the Ford Bronco. I'll have some time codes down below that you can use to skip to the sections that are relevant to you, or if you have this whole kit, then obviously you'll just follow the video start to finish. Then the other thing I want to mention is that if you're doing this reinforcement bracket, you're going to need a T47 Torx bit in order to install this, which is kind of a weird tool or piece that not a lot of people have on hand. So make sure you have that before you get started, or else you're going to get hung up pretty quick. And the last thing I'll say is that it's definitely worthwhile to lay out your hardware and make sure that you have everything you need for all of these pieces, because in our case, we were missing some hardware right off the bat, and I did have to contact Rough Country to get it. So with all of that out of the way, once you know you're good to go and you have the tools you need and all of your hardware is there, you can jump in and we'll get started on it right now. Start by removing your spare tire and then swing open the rear gate so we can get to this access panel. Then once you have this exposed, we're just going to take a plastic pry tool and we're going to pop along the seam of the plastic here. There we go. Inside the gate, we're going to have two connectors up here that we need to undo for the brake light and the camera, and then we're also going to push this grommet through so we can pull the wiring harness through the door. Use a 13mm socket to remove these 8 black bolts that are holding the spare tire carrier onto the gate. If your kit came with plastic spacers, then you're going to want to use those now to support this door underneath the bottom edge where it meets the bumper and also in the gaps on the sides. But if your kit did not include those spacers, you can also use the cardboard that came on the shipping box that you received the kit in, which is what I did here. So if you roll this up, we can use this to space it out to make sure the door doesn't shift. Next, you'll want to grab a ratchet with a T47 Torx bit on it, and we're going to remove the 4 screws here that are holding these hinges to the door. To install the new reinforcement bracket, we're going to replace those hinge bolts that we just pulled out with the new bolts that are provided in Rough Country's kit. So you're basically going to have 4 Allen head bolts with spacers. The spacers are going to sit behind the bracket, and we're going to tighten those down with a 6mm Allen wrench. And then once we have that in place, we can work on installing the relocation bracket on the other side that's going to hold that tire carrier up. Moving over, if the holes in your reinforcement bracket aren't lining up with the holes that are already drilled into the gate, then you may need to just loosen up the bolts we installed for the hinges, and that'll allow this to settle a little bit, and you should be able to get it lined up fairly easily. Now, on our truck, everything's looking pretty solid here, so I'm going to grab the new relocation bracket and the bolts and washers for it, and we're going to install those using a 13mm socket. We'll just punch them in all the way around. Once that relocation bracket is on, then we can get the actual factory tire carrier installed over that. After you've got the relocation bracket mounted up, now is a good time to quickly go back, retighten your hinge bolts, make sure they're solid, and then we're going to remove the spacers that we put in, or in this case the cardboard. Pull that out and just test and make sure that the door opens properly before we install the rest of the tire carrier. On the back of your factory spare tire carrier, you're going to want to grab that wiring harness and pop it out of this little notch on the side, and then pull this first clip off as well. And that's going to allow for a little bit more slack, so that way this can reach back into the gate of the truck. If you purchased a kit that includes this Rough Country third brake light relocation bracket, or you just bought this separately, then you'll want to pay attention to the next couple steps. We're going to start with the 4 screws at the bottom here, and we're going to use a T30 Torx bit to back those out. Place the new bracket over the third brake light assembly, and then we're going to reuse the factory screws here to install into these 4 holes. With the bracket on here tight, we can go ahead and slide it behind the tire carrier. You're going to line up these 4 holes, and we'll use the new hardware that Rough Country provides to install it. Bring your factory spare tire carrier up into place. We're just going to line it up with the holes on the new relocation bracket, and then you want to pull your wiring harness up and into the channel that's already cut into the Rough Country bracket, so that way the wires don't get pinched between the carrier. And now all we need to do is install it with the 8 bolts provided to go through these holes around the outside, and you're just going to use a 13mm socket to tighten those down. All right, folks, that's going to be a wrap on this Rough Country install, and hopefully this was a helpful video to walk you guys through the process. With the full kit installed, we were able to get a 37-inch spare on here, which is awesome. And if you are going to do a 37 on your Bronco, you do want to make sure that you have this full kit with that reinforcement bracket, because it can do some real damage to the tailgate if you don't have that. It's a lot of weight to put on the factory equipment. Now, if you're only doing a 35 or something a little bit smaller, you can get away with only doing the relocation brackets, but you may want to consider the full kit anyways, just because there's a lot of force with having a heavier tire hanging off the back of this little tailgate, especially when you're off-road and the truck's bouncing over rocks and that weight is kind of shifting around. So something to consider, but if you're interested in picking up any of the parts of this kit or the full system, then we're going to have some links down in the description below that'll shoot you over to our website. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.